Hey, how's it going, everybody? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's Dan Lohmar with United Wealth Management. Right now, it's towards the end of the year in 2019, and we're between Christmas and New Year's. And I just wanted to put out a real quick video. My last video was about maximizing PRAP contributions, so putting in pre-tax or Roth, and then doing post-tax contributions and doing in-plan Roth conversions with that. So that's what my last video was about, and I kind of showed some examples, but I didn't really use real numbers. So what I said at the end of that was I would use my PRAP calculator to kind of demonstrate what that looks like using real numbers. So that's what I'm doing right here. And so I just want to make a quick video just to show a few of those examples, just to kind of walk you through this. This is a planner. This is not, this is something that we look at the beginning of the year because that's what it's for, is we're trying to decide what our contribution rates are going to be in January. So that's kind of what the purpose of this is. So this is just to show you what the different areas are. So the blue contributions are personal contributions, either pre-tax or Roth, and they go all the way up to the 402G limit, which is $26,000 if you're above 50, $19,500 if you're not. If you're under 50. And then the yellow are post-tax contributions. So as you can see here, they don't start in the year until your pre-tax or Roth is filled up. And then also the red area are accumulated United contributions throughout the year. And then here are the two limits up on top. 57,000 if you're under 50 and 63,000, 63.5 if you're over 50. And then the purple area signifies RHA Spillover. So that's kind of what things look like throughout the year and where things go as you start to hit these different limits. That's kind of what it's about. So let's look at a couple examples. I'm going to start on the lower end of the pay scale, maybe a second year FO, narrow body FO. And they want to maximize their PRAP throughout the year. And that's all they want to do because they're also saving for college and a bunch of other stuff. But they do want to maximize their personal contributions. And so they do the math, and it says, hey, put in 14% of your paycheck throughout the year, and you're going to max out by the end of the year. So the blue line accumulates throughout the year, and sure enough, by the end of December, it shows that you're going to be maxed out, and sure enough, there's 19.5. They've hit their limit, and that's kind of what it looks like throughout the year. Now they say, hey, but I also would love to put in some post-tax contributions. What's that look like? And of course, if all they do in pre-tax or Roth, and it's not filled up until the end of the year, there's no time left in the year to make post-tax contributions. And so they would not be able to do that. But then all we have to do is just say, all right, and remember, they put 19.5 throughout the year. We're not going to change that amount. We're just going to put it in sooner throughout the year. So let's just say they put in 20% instead. Their pre-tax contributions are now maxed out in September, and they can start post-tax contributions October, November, and December. So that kind of changes the picture of things a little bit. And again, this would be something that you do at the beginning of the year. And remember, when you make your PRAP contribution elections, when you set up your pre-tax, your Roth, and you can go ahead and set your post-tax contributions at the same time, and they won't kick in until these are full. So until your pre-tax and Roth limits are full. So again, you can kind of preset that if this is what you want to do. And again, this is a planner. We're kind of looking ahead at the year and kind of seeing what it looks like down the road. Could this person make RHA spillover? Could they contribute so much that they have RHA spillover? They could if they really, really wanted to, but it would be somewhat of an unrealistic scenario because it'd be such a large percent of their pay. I would wonder what they're living off of at that point. But they could if they really wanted to. But let's look at a little bit more realistic scenario. So 5 years down the road, same person is putting in the same amount. They're going to put 20% of their paycheck in and 13%, 20% pre-tax or Roth, and then 13% post-tax. So as you look at throughout the year, yeah, their pre-tax and Roth is filled up by July. And then they have time and they have room in the PRAP. So you look up here, you got room up here in the PRAP. It's not full yet. So they have time and space to put post-tax contributions in. So it's kind of what that looks like. Now, could this person create RHA spillover? And yes, they absolutely could. And it'd be a little bit easier to do. So let's just say this year they have $15,000 in profit sharing. And I'm just throwing some numbers out there, and they're going to put 90% of it in because they do want to be aggressive about this. And sure enough, this is kind of what it looks like. They hit their pre-tax Roth limits by the end of February. They start post-tax contributions in March. And sure enough, by the end of the year, they are hitting their limits since they're under 50, they're hitting their $57,000 limits, and then they get some RHA spillover. What's it look like if they were over 50? Because that changes the limits a little bit. 52. And it's going to change things just a little bit because they don't start getting spillover at 57. They start to get spillover at the higher limit of 63.5. That's because the catch-up contribution is always allowed to happen in there. So it's kind of what that looks like. That changes it. Just something to keep in mind there. So a fairly more normal situation is when you start to see spillover a little bit more regularly is when you're looking at senior wide body FOs. And this would be a fairly typical scenario. And so it's something I want to point out because it's something to keep an eye on whether you wanted spillover or not. But this is a fairly typical contribution example where they're putting in 20% pre-tax, maybe a good portion of their profit sharing. We could even use 50% of it, not quite the full thing, and then 13% post-tax. So this would be a situation where, you're going to start to get some spillover on a little bit more regular basis without trying. So if you didn't want it, something to be heads up for. You might change your contribution strategies there. And again, 13% is I always like to use about 2/3 of what your pre-tax is. And that's just a rough gauge if you wanted your cash flow and your take-home pay to be about the same, because remember, one is pre-tax and one is post-tax. So it's totally up to you, but just a little gauge I use to kind of if a person wants to keep their paychecks about the same. So that's kind of what that looks like. Let's look at more of a wide body captain. And I'll show you a scenario that I run into on a little bit more regular basis. I think this throws people off a little bit. And let's do 7%, 0 there, and 0 there. And what happens is they say, hey, I want to max out my personal portion of the PREP. So I want to max out my $26,000 throughout the year. And so they do the math, and that says, all right, that's going to be about 7% of your paycheck. So they elect to put 7% in of their paycheck throughout starting in January. And what happens though is they don't get the entire amount in there. And the reason is because it's a little bit slow filling up. Your contributions are United's putting their contributions in at a higher rate, and it's filling the entire thing up a little bit faster than what you're reaching for your limit right there. So as you can see, all the limits are reached by September, but your personal contributions are not maxed out yet. So this is just something to be aware of, because I've seen that a number of times. So all you have to do is just up the rate a little bit, just so it gets in a little bit sooner throughout the year, and you'd be hitting your limits around August. And then you're going to get a little bit more spillover, but I'm just assuming that's going to be okay with you. Again, your objective here is just to maximize your personal contributions. So here's another situation. So there's always discussion of whether I want to minimize spillover or maximize this. Let's just say a person does not want to create any additional spillover. And this is more for people that are making above the compensation limit of $285. So the question is, how much can you contribute to the PREP without you creating additional spillover? Because remember, once your compensation hits $285, all company contributions go into the retirement health account. So what's the number? You can contribute in 2020 up to $17,900 without creating any additional spillover yourself. So that ends up being about 5% of your hourly rate. So let's just kind of see what that looks like. So that's about 5%. You're not putting any profit sharing in. You're not putting any post-tax contributions in. You are hit $17,892. So let's just call that $17,900 by the end of the year. And again, you're not getting any spillover due to the, you start to get some due to the compensation limit throughout later in the year. But anyway, so that's the kind of number to keep in mind there. And let's just see what that looks like. If you didn't change it, you got right now you've got 11,654 in spillover. If you did not put any in, you still have the same amount of spillover because it's all due to the compensation limit. And so you go back, you make 5%, fills it up, and then you should see what if you put 7% in, just a little bit more, and sure enough, that would create about an additional $2,000 in spillover, just to just kind of demonstrate that what that looks like. So the last scenario I'll talk about is a captain who wants to maximize spillover, just maximize contributions, spillover. They're coming up on retirement and they want to contribute as much as they possibly can. So 3 years ago, 62 years old, and they're going to put 90% of their paycheck in. And again, remember, that's not throughout the entire year. That's just gonna fill your limits up by the end of January. They're gonna put 90% of profit sharing in, and we're gonna put, say, profit sharing is 20, and they're gonna put 20% of their paycheck in on a post-tax basis. This is kind of what that looks like. Is by January, their pre-tax Roth limits are reached because they put almost the entire paycheck in there by January, and then they get post-tax contributions from the pay in February, and it's such a large portion. Those get maxed out plus profit sharing, and so everything by the end of February is pretty much maxed out. And remember, you're getting a full paycheck the rest of the year after that. So it's realistic in that if you did some cash flow planning and you had some savings you live off of for the first couple months of the year, even though you're not getting a big paycheck, you're getting actually a bigger paycheck the rest of the year because there's no contribution deductions taken out. So it's just something to keep in mind. And as you can see here, it's very aggressive. So overall personal contributions, $49,000, almost $50,000 throughout the year. You can take $23,000 in post-tax contributions, convert that to the Roth 401k, and that's tax-free for the rest of your life. So that's huge. That's double tax-free. You're getting $43,000 in RHA Spillover. That's triple tax-free. So this is a great way to really sock some money away if that's what you want to do. But again, I know some folks are saying, hey, I would never want that much money to go into my retirement health account. Maybe because they're single, they're on TRICARE, a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of personal reasons why. But this person, let's just say again, this person, for example, is 63. They just made wide body captain. They've been paying their house off. They've been putting kids through college, and they finally have excess money to save as much as they can. And they don't have a huge RHA balance. So that'd be a situation where they want to do something like this. So, and again, everybody's situation is different. So it's just a good example to show that. So anyway, so those are some examples from a junior person on the lower end of the pay scale, all the way up the chain to kind of see what it looks like and what your different contribution amounts look like and how they affect things, where they go throughout the year. So I really kind of hope that helps everybody kind of see what it looks like graphically. And again, appreciate you tuning in. My next video is going to be about doing backdoor Roth IRA. So that's another medium that we have to contribute to a tax-deferred account. And I know there's some talk about that. The one thing I want to point out on that is that people commonly forget is something called a step transaction. And so that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in that video. And the reason that's important is because if the IRS can views your backdoor Roth IRA as a step transaction, they're not going to allow it. So make sure you tune into that so that you know that make sure you're doing backdoor Roth IRAs the right way, and so that you know when that video comes out. Go ahead and subscribe and remember and hit the bell icon so that you get notified. Anyway, hey, thanks for tuning in. Hope everybody's had a great year. Merry Christmas again, Happy New Year, and I'll be back at you probably next week with that video on the backdoor Roth IRA. Hey, thanks a lot.